I think it's fair to say that the policy agenda during this campaign has been weak. The Labor leader, as we know, has played a perpetual small target, and the coalition has avoided any large-scale policies that might turn off voters. So what does someone who's made Australia's greatest fortune from taking chances and exporting some of our best mining and agricultural products think of what both major parties are offering this time round? What have they avoided that needs to be addressed in this country, and can Scott Morrison still win from here? I'm joined now live from Perth by Australia's richest person and someone renowned for her philanthropy, of course, Gina Rinehart. Gina, thank you so much for your opportunity and thank you for your time.
Chris, thanks for having me, and thank you for many of your programs, which I've enjoyed watching. Thank you.
Very kind. What are the top issues to voters that you have gleaned over the last 5 weeks? And have the leaders been across what they should have been across?
Well, if I can answer the second part first, and I do not think that the leaders have been sufficiently across what I see are Australia's two most important issues. I can't speak on behalf of all the electors, but I believe the most important issues are two. One of them is our defence. You know, as I repeatedly say, if we don't have our country, what do we have? And the second one is the economy. The economy is so important. It's what drives living standards. It's what drives jobs. It's what drives revenue. It's what drives opportunities. And, you know, that is very important for us, especially if we want to and we need to pay for things like our defence, our police, our kindergartens, our aged care, and so many other good things that we need to do as a country.
If we don't have our country, what have we got? Superb line. Anthony Albanese has not had a good campaign. Even close Labor contacts of mine tell me that. But it seems as if the polls are stubbornly refusing to recognise his failings. Why do you think that is?
Probably, in my view, for two reasons. One, because the Liberals haven't really considered their base. And then the other thing too is that, you know, perhaps because they're avoiding these hard issues. And one of the things I'd particularly like to mention is the Liberals' base is primarily from the the elderly, and also the senior citizens, and also the vets. And, you know, not to be letting vets and pensioners go to work if they choose. I don't wish to be wrongly quoted and said, oh, they must go to work. I'm never saying that. But if they choose, and right now it's just too hard for them, because not only do they lose their pension if they work for more than $480 a fortnight, they lose it first 50 cents in the dollar and then increasing amounts further up. But the onerous paperwork that they have to go through. So I think they should be allowed, and it's similar for our vets. And goodness me, our vets have risked their lives for our country, gone through hell, sacrificed, and they, in my view, should be allowed to work if they choose to work. And so, you know, to actually have their pensions cut, to have to go through all this paperwork, I think is entirely wrong, and morally wrong, first and foremost. But after that, also a very poor thing, a poor idea, when we have such a crying work shortage, and when we also have a personnel shortage in our defence, our real defence. I'm talking about the defence outside of Canberra.
Mm-hmm. See, when I raise this on radio, the phones go berserk with older people saying, yes, someone has finally said what I've been thinking all along. I want to contribute to the workforce. I can't do that because of the ceiling on what I can earn. It is such a big issue and rarely touched during this election campaign. The other thing that we haven't touched on too much is self-reliance. You've been very supportive of Australia being dependent on itself.
Yes, once again, we get back to the economy. If we can do what's been proven around the world to work, cut tax, cut tape, we have a much stronger economy. And I think we should also make sure we have good alliances with our friends and make sure we continue things like a free trade policy with our friends. And so I think that very important to do what we can to be self-reliant. I noticed one of the independents was saying something the other day, one of the Teals, that, oh, well, in Australia we'll be fine. We can do things like, the net zero policies, because look at all our rare earths, look at all our lithium. But, what has been left out in that discussion is one, in iron ore, for instance, it's on a rough average 57% Fe to 62% Fe. A significant part of what you remove is ore. If you're dealing with rare earths, it is often 3% and less to find the rare earths. So the mines would have to be pretty significant. And just for, say, Roy Hill, it took about 10 years to get through the approvals, permits, licenses. So I think a bit of reality needs to be injected into things like this when we say, oh, and we're self-sufficient in rare earths and we're self-sufficient in lithium. We've actually got to do something about cutting the tape so that we can be self-sufficient. It's no use to us sitting in the ground.
Great point. Maybe the Teal Independent would have been better off seeking some advice from you before they went off at the mouth. Anthony Albanese's inability to understand the basics of the economy at the moment has been gobsmacking. Has it been that way to you?
Well, he's really shot to limelight recently, of course, because he's leader of the other major party in our country. And he, is to be credited for the fact that he came from a very poor background. And so to see himself as leader of the party is pretty huge. But I wish that along the way he'd had the opportunity to work in, say, small business or in business or have his own business, because I think that would really help his economic understanding. I'm told, I don't know for an absolute fact, that when he was working as a junior staffer for the Hawke-Keating government, that he wasn't pro their moderate policies. So I'm just hoping that, you hear that old saying, a leopard changed his spots. I do rather hope he's been that leopard that's changed his spots.
He's changed a lot in terms of what he says he is. We know that. Okay, two quick questions. Could we have seen some bigger projects promised in terms of policy? And can Scott Morrison win from here?
Infrastructure, I get very nervous hearing that, oh, let's pay more of the taxpayers' money into public infrastructure or government organised infrastructure. We just need to look at what has happened in Sydney for instance, the George Street. That's costing more and more and more delays and delays and delays. So not a good example. We've had another example in Perth. It's called the extension of the Tonkin Highway. Cost, I'm told, $1 billion, maybe more. And really and truly, private enterprise could have done it for probably less than 100 mil, short distance, flat country. So I do get nervous when we hear things about public infrastructure. But I'm sorry, you told me one other question. What was the other one?
The other question is, can Scott Morrison win from here?
I think he could if he, of course, no crystal ball, but I really think he needs to get back to remembering his base and, just on the voter, the pensioners, as I've mentioned, and the elderlies, the senior citizens is the correct name. For the senior citizens, that is their biggest base, and he should actually jump on board this, the policy to let them work if they wish. And similarly, although of course not in the same numbers, but remember the seniors are now 2.5 million people across Australia. That's a significant portion of vote, including in the marginals. And then, of course, the vets are not the same degree of voters, of course, but they have a lot of supporters as well. So I think to do things to let them both work would be something that would be a very useful policy. But I think basically if people just look at putting our country first, and to put our country first, we've got to look at parties that actually bother to increase our defence expending, increase the ability for our defence personnel to get back into defence, and also, as I said, do something real about the economy, not give lip service, but actually do something real about cutting tax and tape, because then we'd have one of the best economies in the world.
wonderful to get your insight, especially given where we are in this election campaign. Gina Rinehart, thank you very much for your time.
Chris, and thank you.
Good on you.